But yeah, Raiden did nothing wrong.
Yep, there we go.
I mean, like,
That's how we're starting this? Really?
I mean, like, given the circumstances, she did do a lot of things wrong, but she definitely wasn't as culpable as it initially appeared.
Only by our standards. And who are we to criticize Eternity?
I mean,
This
in
is
this
bad.
situation, we're the traveler, a helpful if unseemly vagrant who's accompanied by a large, glowing, talking parrot.
Yeah, I feel like the whole point of this game is that we inflict our values on others.
I mean,
Oh.
when it comes down to it, we are actually judge, jury, and executioner in a lot of situations.
Also, we are actively, what was it, a counter agent to the whole eternity thing, given the entire, what was it, the transience, like our transient nature in general.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the whole vagrancy thing.
Yeah. That's why we waltz on in there, and she's like, ooh, I don't like that.
My fax
Like
machine
seeing
does
a
not like
stain.
that.
It's like seeing a stain on the floor, just like, oh, yuck.
Disgusting!
I'm just gonna let my answering machine deal with this.
Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't, given the option?
Right.
You think it's like a beeper situation where all she gets is like a ping that just says like, "Hey, trouble."
She gets
And it's
like
just
she gets like a written up report like my Roomba does every time it finishes. It's like, we had 3 dust events and I got stuck on the corners only twice.
I can see that.
Yeah,
Good job.
All right,
Okay, but wait. Do you think, though, that there are situations that the Raiden Shogun gets into where it does send that report of, like, caught on overhang? And, like, the
Oh yeah.
A has to come out and find it?
In the beginning it was so hard to get her to go down the stairs.
Could definitely see that.
I mean, that's what the extensive prototyping was for.
Anyway, we're the Shade Chamber. Welcome to episode 1, I think.
This ever sees the light of day.
Yeah.
We didn't even get to the intro before someone mentioned Real Dolph.
We're taking bets now on how long this is going to last.
Mm-hmm.
We want to talk about Genshin, just because it's really kind of surpassed our expectations, both like as a product and as a phenomenon. And we kind of want to just do like regular check-ins of like the state of where this movement is at like as we go along. And we came up with the idea of doing it like twice a patch, basically at the end of each banner, so that we could have time to kind of like digest all the content and then like talk about what we did. But the thing is, like, you burn through it so fast and then you get into the grind that, like, I wouldn't say stale, but we are a little ways removed, enough that we're not like quite chomping at the bit to discuss stuff because it's kind of already been processed by us. But like, for the sake of our posterity and anybody else who comes along and listens to this, we'll try to just kind of we'll go through our vibe check for 2.1 and shit.
Also, it's always really fun to dish on like on when you have a love-hate relationship with a game.
Yes,
Oh,
Genshin
absolutely.
Genshin just encourages a very strange relationship with itself.
There's a lot to
Strange.
say about it, like more than I thought there was really going to be. Like when we got into like the fucking like Dark Souls item descriptions, I was like, "Oh, I like played this game with the volume like mostly down, listening to other videos on like YouTube for the first huge chunk of like the amount of time I was playing it. Like I basically paid attention to the surface level story and I didn't realize like how deep a lot of the stuff ended up going with it."
Yeah,
But-
and it wasn't really until Inazuma that kind of like those little Easter eggs in the item descriptions and stuff really started paying off. And that's when we realized, like, oh, this game is ambitious.
Yeah, and I think that, like, especially 2.1 was really sort of the first instance in which a lot of those seeds planted early on really came to fruit.
And we were waiting for Inazuma for a long time. Like, it was always, like, the meme, like, of, like, when's Inazuma happening? You know, because we knew that there was going to be a whole ass, like, new country added to the game. But, you know, until now, we didn't exactly have, like, a development time frame for what MiHoYo could put out and when. like we were playing it back on like Dragon's Spine. We were like, I think Inazuma might be in like February, and then it was like Inazuma won't be until April, and here we
Yeah.
are, you know, September 2021. Like about like what 2 months into it now at this point.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, why don't we go in order of who got in first and talk about like when we got in, what our play habits are kind of like, maybe even like our spending habits for transparent, like what kind of Genshin players are we at our point in time? So
Yeah. So I'll start. I'm Break. I am the drug dealer. I saw an advertisement for Genshin on a PlayStation achievement website. Said to myself, I'm not going to play that. Then went to Twitter, saw, hey, the game is a little bit like a gacha free-to-play Breath of the Wild. And I was saying, how the hell can you do that? That sounds impossible. I was rolling off of FGO, so I, in the same day, discovered and downloaded the game, which also happened to be launch day. And then I started streaming it just through PlayStation 4 onto Twitch, mostly for people in the Discord here. Yeah, I was generally speaking like 100% free to play until about 2 weeks ago when I bought one of the battle passes, one of the Welkin Moons, and then the second battle pass. So in total at this time, I have spent $25 on the game. We don't actually need to say the monetary number if we don't
no,
want to.
we definitely don't. Just like
no.
what bracket would you put yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, I would put myself as a tiny goldfish. Let's see. I got Venti like the very first day, so I've had Venti since day one. Got Zhongli and Albedo a little bit later. Got Bennett and Zhang Ling up. Got Beto, who is more or less this server's favorite character.
Beto's the fucking best!
More recently, I have gotten Kazuha and Ayaka, and they're both just fantastic. Jean was also in there as one of the pity rolls while I was trying to get Child. Yeah, that's me. That's kind of my play habit so far.
Nice.
Now here's the question: who's next? Because I honestly don't remember.
I think
I believe
actually Rad. It's either Rad or Wander.
I think I started playing like maybe like a week or two after it launched.
Yeah, so definitely before me then.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I guess that makes me the next one. I'm Rad. I've had an on and off relationship with Genshin Impact for a while. I wander in, I play some, I roll some, I wander back out when my attention shifts elsewhere. Short attention span, that kind of thing. I probably rate as like a dolphin as far as my rolling habits go. I don't know if I quite qualify as a whale, but well, we're not going to quibble about that detail
No,
in
no.
particular.
We're not here to shame.
Let's see. I got Venti when his banner was out. Around like what, the beginning of the game. Think I got Zhongli when he around when he dropped. And Child. I didn't roll for Albedo because I wasn't playing at that time because I was off again. I was in an off again phase of the on again off again. Let's see. The last banners were, what was it, like Kazuha Aika and then Ball? Was it? Or
Yoimiya was in there too.
oh, Yoimiya too. Okay, yeah.
Oh, did you get Yoi?
I did get Yoi.
Nice.
Hi.
And Kazuha and Aika and the Raiden Shogun.
All them Inazumers.
Yeah, like honestly, I kind of just play this game when I feel like it, and sometimes I'm playing other games and I sort of like don't think about it, and then I end up coming back. Like it was like I'm like contractually obligated to play this game now after I rolled Kazuha. So I mean, I've spent some time on it more recently, but that's about it, I guess.
All right. Well, I'm Wander. I am an Umibozu.
God.
Bit of a monster, unfortunately. Yeah, I too have rolled Kazuha and Ayaka and Yoimiya and Raiden Shogun, and most 5 stars except for I think just Klee at this point.
Do you have coaching?
I do have Kaching. I think that's the only 5-star I don't have is Klee, which honestly is probably for the best. Yeah, my current team is Ganyu, my one, my true, my love, Child, Chi-Chi, and I kind of switch out the third one between Xiao and Hu Tao, depending on which spear user I like more in that moment. I have been playing since, I think it was like about a month after launch, or it was probably just pretty close after you, Rad, where I jumped in and I wasn't sure what to expect. I'd seen, Break playing, and we had a lot of fun discussing things. Like I remember you telling me, like, I think this guy might be the wind god, and just being like, oh, huh, cool.
Yeah, back when I was still figuring out that having rolled Venti but having not done the story.
Yeah. And that just kind of drew me in. I really enjoyed it. The gameplay was so much fun. Even with like the like early game characters that they give you for free, like Amber was a part of my OG team. I maxed out her friendship. She was on my team for so long.
Aw.
I like Amber. People don't give her enough credit. She tries.
We respect Ambi in this house.
Exactly. Everyone but Kaya. All the starters except Kaya. No one respects Kaya.
Very good mechanically. Just a huge douchebag.
Exactly.
He
Okay,
is
I'll
a
stand
rat.
over here in the I'm okay with Kaya corner.
That's fair.
I mean, that's okay.
That's
Yeah.
fair. Yes. But yeah, so I guess just I played the game mostly the way Break did for a long period of time, which was just kind of play through the story, like half paying attention, not really too focused, because once you get past a certain point, it's kind of obvious that like it's pretty tropey. Like you're able to follow it pretty easily. And then once we started getting the new stuff in these last couple patches is when I got drawn more into the world and the storytelling, and that's kind of what got us to lead to all these discussions about what was going on that ultimately led to this.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
Nice. I suppose I'd be up next then, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Jer, ya boy. And I would say that I probably, on terms of the spending habits, qualify as a narwhal, which is to say I only wail for child.
Hell yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, so I actually joined the game during his banner because, well, I mean, at least one of the components was it sounded like he had interesting gameplay, at least for what I understood of the game. I didn't really play Breath of the Wild, but the game did look like a lot of fun. So I, like Break, kind of had previous experience in Gacha and FGO. And to that end, I actually kind of wasn't super enthusiastic about Genshin just because the prospect of like another Gacha game is kind of a hard sell for me. But then actually after getting in and really like being able to get a feel for the game mechanically and in terms of the exploration, I did enjoy it quite a bit and ended up sort of powering through the story and then very rapidly like essentially becoming current with it. It took me a long time to get a 5-star that I was actually satisfied with. I think for most of my early game, I ended up running I think it was a Chongyun Beidou team before I ended up getting my first 5-star in Diluc, who will occasionally be referred to as Ladakh. Just in case anyone is wondering who we're talking about when we say Ladakh. And then eventually Albedo sort of became like the central peoples I used to go through most of the Mondstadt and Liyue story. And then after getting really current on it, it was just kind of being strung along through event to event as the game updated, all the way through the most recent Inazuma patch, which I think was really sort of the most instance, probably the most obvious instance in which it really felt like there was a comprehensive sort of jump in quality in terms of storytelling, as well as sort of not being as tropey or play it by the numbers, as Wander sort of alluded to earlier. But yeah,
Yeah. All right, I'm the baby of the group. My name is Beefy. I held out. Also, like I've dipped my toes into Gacha. I've dipped my toes into Breath of the Wild, and basically just like avoided Genshin like the plague until the plague came for me. I got into it. My first banner was Ayaka's banner, and I fucking marathoned it. So I have been pretty much playing Genshin nonstop since late July. And that's when there was kind of enough to do that. So very different experience being on the other end of all that stuff and not really like caring about having things spoiled until Inazuma. Um, I would say I'm a low spender. I'm definitely BP with Elkin. Did get Ball's weapon as well. Not proud of that, but I'm also proud of that. Uh, team wise, I'm still kind of dancing with the ones that brought me after the starter characters. I ended up running most of the game with Yanfei, Ningguang, Beidou, and Jean, and now kind of swapping in and out at my leisure is my Raiden Shogun. Um, yeah, I kind of had the same like misgivings honestly about Genshin until like the very recent chapters where it's like okay, it's anime, it's tropey, it's da da da. It's Breath of the Wild, it wears its homages on its sleeve. But it's like, oh, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And then I end up liking this game more than I liked Breath of the Wild, and I'm like, I'm a monster, but also they're doing interesting stuff. And then and then Inazuma was the point where it all kind of culminated into like this is a game worth like chronicling. And here we are.
Which I think, yeah, is just kind of a good intro into why are we doing this now? Which
Yes.
is because this is the point at which things are interesting enough to talk about, really.
Yeah, frankly, like sorry, but like the story until then was kind of slapdash. Like at the best, like stuff was getting set up but not really paying off. The mechanics hadn't really been expanded upon, like especially in terms of the world mechanics were still like you could tell like Inazuma came about after they had a chance to get some feedback from players, and you can tell.
yeah. The stories in Inazuma are just so much more like intertwined and sort of internally consistent, in a way that gives the region like a really strong identity. It's really obvious that they sort of took notes from Liyue and Mondstadt and what people really responded to as they traveled through those regions.
Moreover, I think that something really important about the whole of Inazuma is that the conflict is really tangible, driven, and makes for a good story. Which
Right.
it was a little more esoteric, a little more nebulous during the Mondstadt and Liyue chapters. Mondstadt, for the
Yeah.
most part, we kind of Mondstadt's fine, but it is very much like the Green Hill Zone of the whole setting, where
For
you have
sure.
big grassy plains and stuff, and it just kind of looks like sort of. I mean, when it comes down to it, really a discount Hyrule. You're not really getting anything like super crunchy out of it. Liyue making it in there, like Liyue is like a setting was beautiful, and I love the mountains and just generally like what all the sightlines look like. The plot itself kind of driven off of a lot of like esoteric spirituality and contract based sort of legal
Yeah.
But even then, like they built up this conflict, saying it was between the people of Liyue and like their old gods who were kind of falling out of favor. But like there were never any explicit threats made. There was no like understanding from the audience end of like what this conflict actually was.
Yeah, and I
Like
mean
there
Yeah,
were
it was very externalized with like the Fatui like once again kind of stepping in and taking a villainous role. but the themes itself, like Wander was saying just now, really weren't expanded on in any sort of way that's really, I think, we're going for what they were trying to go for.
Yeah. And to that end, like you would have the odd side quest that sort of played into like maybe some of the history of the world, but barring the odd character quest, which is say like mostly Zhongli's Act One, a lot of Liwei's actual side quests had sort of very little to do with the broader conflict between, or at least the nominal conflict between sort of the Adepti and the people living within Liyue Harbor.
Yeah.
Um,
Like it felt like they were in Liyue, they were trying to like onboard us to all these different like world building concepts so much that like we couldn't really be compelled by what was going on, and like I feel like Liyue like looks better in hindsight when like at the very end with Zhongli and Signora as they kind of talk about what happened, but like the entire time you're going through that mission, I was just like, why are we doing this? What's happening? And you spend most of your time like away from the pivotal moments. Like you're fucking around with Zhongli, as he bridezilla's his own funeral.
Zhongli Bridezilla's his own funeral. You have to hang out with the obvious traitor character as you just
Yeah.
sort of like listen to him BS you for several hours. There's something with the ballista you gotta do. There's a lot of talking animals that yell at you over nothing.
Yeah.
Who are apparently
Yeah.
a major threat to the people of Liyue, and yet that is never expressed.
It's
Like,
kind
we
of
never
Yeah.
see that.
you're wanted for all of 5 minutes, and then as soon as you leave the city and come back, it's like, oh, they just swept that under the rug, apparently.
Yeah, you beat up a lot of cops and then you get to hang out with the president.
the Liyue arc was a little bit like being. I think that it was a little bit like a Shanxia plot, but I probably butcher that horribly. Sorry.
No.
But like from the outside, because you're not like the chosen one necessarily. You're just kind of there for the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it kind of reminds me of like the frozen world of Kingdom Hearts 3, where it's like all the events happen and you're not there for them. You just kind of see their aftermaths, and it's just not very satisfying.
Yeah.
Complete with a rousing rendition of "Let It Go." With the
Yeah,
addition of
let me
French
go, let me go, run your city by yourself.
Basically.
That's Zhongli. But we're not here to talk about that, because that's not why we made a Genshin podcast. We made a Genshin podcast because the stuff they're doing recently is pretty interesting.
We made
Yeah.
a podcast for one reason: Raiden Shogun.
Exactly.
Indeed.